Hey there, everyone. How you doing? It's me. It's Professor Broman. We're back in Destiny, and we're about to talk about something that's got Reddit really upset. And I can't wait. So here we go, chat. We're going to talk about power creep. Recently, okay, in Destiny, along with all the big changes and trials coming back and all this other stuff that I'm sure you want to hear me talk about, which we'll get around to eventually. There's a discussion, or there's a thing that's happening. Weapons are going to be sunset, okay? Taken out of the game after a number of seasons because they will have a infusion limit. So essentially, you'll be able to use a weapon for a few seasons, and then you won't be able to infuse it up anymore. One of the direct pieces of reasoning of this was power creep. So we're going to start with what power creep is, prove that it exists in Destiny because there's some people who are acting like it doesn't, and then go from there. So what is power creep? Power creep is actually one of the coolest, I mean, it's frustrating to deal with as a game dev, but it is one of the most interesting problems that game developers have to deal with when they make long-term worlds that have RPG elements and things like that. So essentially, let's say you are crafting a boss encounter, okay? And you know the damage output limit of every weapon in the game is around, we'll give it a simple number, 1. If a crew comes in with the best shit in the game, your damage output against the boss, per bullet, averaged across all of the players in this raid encounter, they're doing 1 damage to the boss per bullet, right? And that's awesome because you designed the encounter to take 100 bullets to complete, and you're only going to land 20 bullets per rotation, so it's going to average out to about, 5 rotations to kill the boss with really, tight damage mechanics. You create a really great encounter. That's dope. And you launch the game with that, and it's really exciting, and people are competing, and it feels good. Then you release an expansion, and in the expansion, one of the things you do is you raise the relative power level of everyone in the game. So now all of these players, they've completed the new content, and the new content, everything is still averaged out to 1. You do the boss encounters in the new raid, and your average damage pulled per bullet is 1. But if you go back to the older encounter, you've discovered something. Oh, in this encounter, my bullet damage average is now 2. So you've effectively made this old encounter half as engaging, or take half as much time as it did previously. Now you release another expansion, and everything's averaged at 1 on the new expansion. But if you go back to expansion, we'll call that expansion 2. You go back to expansion 1. Now that final encounter has the same problem, where the damage is 2. Instead of 1 averaged across the encounter. And if you go even further back, now you're dealing with the damage being 3. Now you can imagine this is going to trickle out for a long time to get to the point where you're going to have crazy damage numbers against this first encounter that was designed for you to do 1 damage per bullet against a boss. Now you're doing 10 damage per bullet against a boss. You're one-cycling fucking everything in the game. It's super easy. You just load in, you pop a barrier, you fucking mow down the boss with the goddamn whatever the skill, whatever the high damage output weapon is, and now you have encounters like Riven that were ball crushing that are hilarious. And the reason that they can be done hilariously is power creep. Yes, there's a lot of other things that you are melding together when you're talking about people killing Riven solo. Really high skilled play with integrating a lot of other side chains to really boost your damage. But at the core of it, ignoring that outlier, which is always going to be there, someone's always going to find a way to do something like that. Across the entire experience of Destiny, the old encounters, the vanilla stuff is hilariously easy to do now because of the amount of power you can bring in as a Guardian. One cycling raid bosses is something I have personally never felt like should exist in an MMO. That's a personal thing. I get that it's cool, and I love doing it when I do it myself. But And that has like a whole lot of other conversations. But the reason a lot of this is happening is because there are some weapons in the game that are so unbelievably powerful that the fact that they're allowed to sort of be around all the time creates this infinite power creeping problem. You know, whether it was the Mountaintop or the Recluse or whatever, if those weapons had been sunset before they became the ultimate exotics in the game, things like the Crown of Sorrows raid race would have gone differently. Because people would have used different things. The raiding encounters would have seemed, you know, it all would have changed, is essentially the point that I'm trying to make. But you can also see this power creep happen in other insidious ways in Destiny. One of them is what I like to call affectionately, or maybe not so affectionately, the midnight coup problem. For the longest time I could possibly imagine, the only weapon I would ever see when I would log into a stream for people who did PvE content was the midnight coup. It was the midnight coup all the time. Midnight coup. What are you doing? I'm raiding. Midnight coup. World first race a year later. Midnight coup. World first race a year and a half later. Midnight coup. Like maybe a year and a half's generous. Maybe that was Recluse instead of midnight coup. But you get my point. There are weapons and items that are placed into the game that break it over time because you can use them forever. Other MMOs use this power creep structure to sunset weapons constantly. They do that because the weapons that you're getting eventually have a drop limit for their damage output. So you can't just farm the first raid in World of Warcraft over and over again and then expect to go in and take that weapon and then go do the final encounter in the new expansion. Because that weapon will be so unbelievably underpowered that it won't work. For me, I think that the most important thing around all of this is we have been dealing with power creep for a long time, and I would even go so far as to suggest that we really don't know what it's like to play Destiny without a really heavy level of power creep. In Destiny 1, we did have like a lot of mitigating factors, you know, as laid out. You know, raid weapons and things from Vault of Glass weren't usable forever until we got to the Age of Triumph, and then it was like a huge celebration and everybody loved it because those weapons had been gone and now they could come back. I think seasonality in weapons is awesome. I think it's really important. It is, in my mind, it is an elegant solution to a very complex problem that Destiny has. One of the things that I have never been able to solve myself mentally is how could Destiny address this problem without like ruining everything. Exotic weapons are obviously going to be left out of this for now. That's something that they mentioned. So your exotics are going to be able to power creep with you all the way along, but I think that's okay. Those are designed to intentionally be strong. The issue is when you have a legendary that's overpowered and it ruins the game for 2 years. Or it simplifies choice for 2 years, or whatever word you would like to use. So I'm really, really looking forward to seeing the changes that are coming along in Destiny to directly address this power creep. Now, if you don't believe power creep is real, I will just ask you this question. How much easier is it for you to kill literally everything in this game now compared to 2 years ago? It's a lot fucking easier. Sure, with the right nightfall modifiers, we could all one-cycle bosses and things like that. But now it's kind of just part of the game. Whatever raid encounter you're doing, whatever nightfall boss you're fighting, you're expected to be able to one-cycle it, and you're expected to bring in one set of gear, and you're expected to handle that in one singular, situation. And that might be cool, and you might like that. But a game like Destiny is built around getting attached to weapons and having joy when you find new weapons and all of this other stuff. And it becomes impossible to experience. Oh, God! Oh, God! becomes impossible to experience that joy when you don't care because every weapon that's dropping isn't as strong as the Recluse, or every heavy that's dropping isn't a Yallarhorn, or every primary that's dropping isn't a perfectly rolled spared rations. Sunsetting weapons is a way for everyone in Destiny to get the joy back from drops and address some longer tail dev issues as well. I'm excited about it. I'm happy to see how this new structure in addressing power creep is going to work out. I'm excited. I think it's going to be cool. And I'm looking forward to how it is going to change the game's landscape over time. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to rate, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. And I'll talk to you next time. Peace.